Surprise, surprise, here we are again. Yes, it's your old neighborhood buddy Spider back on the podcast thing, doing that thing again. This is something new I just came up with. And I think my volume's a little bit high, so I'm going to just smidge it down just a little bit. Hopefully that's pretty good. But, this is my new updated return podcast. It's going to be different from the last ones I've done. Of course, you may remember that I was on a radio show some time ago that was all about, interviewing local bands and local musicians, and the other half of that station, she is a terrible person. So, of course, we don't do that anymore. Then I had the Dirty Rotten Weekend, where I would just play music for you, for the most part, and crack a joke in between. And then I was part of This Uncanny Earth, which is still continuing. It's just not on Spreaker. It's not on podcast form anymore. It's strictly on YouTube and on Twitch and various other places. So catch it there. But now, this is part of my new rebranding because I know how to do it. Some other people don't. So this is part of my Spider Does Things umbrella. I have a channel on YouTube, Twitch, and Facebook, etc., all the nice places. And I've decided to come back to audio-only podcasting in addition to all of that, so that I can kind of get in on the, all the other platforms that are out there, which are Apple and iTunes and Slacker and all those other ones. I don't know how many. There's like a ton of them. There's like a ton of podcast things out there. So this is my new podcast. It's not going to be music-based. It's going to be me rambling at you for anywhere from a half hour to an hour, depending. Okay? So, what's the topic? Since this is something... I'm going to mumble around a little bit. Since this is clearly a sequel, tonight's topic is sequels. And the show is called Let's Talk About This. So, sequels. Let's talk about this. Nice little sound effect to bring that in. So what's the deal with sequels? This, of course, is the sequel to my old podcast. It's something new and fresh and different. A sequel has similar themes and similar characters as a previous bit of media, but is still self-contained, and you don't have to have seen the previous to enjoy the sequel. Some examples of sequels. Let's see. Star Trek movies. Classic Star Trek movies. Star Trek the Motion Picture, a self-contained individual story. Okay. Star Trek The Rack. That's a different kind of movie. Star Trek The Wrath of Khan, Star Trek 2, is a sequel because it contains the same characters, same basic themes, and is in the same universe, but it is its own self-contained story. It is not directly connected with the motion picture that came before it. And likewise, it's not directly connected with 3 or 4 or 5 after that. There are some events that carry over, but it is not a part 1, part 2, part 3 kind of extended universe sort of thing. So that's a sequel. Now, there are other things that don't count as sequels, even if they're successive films. Say, you've got the Pirates of the Caribbean movies, right? Curse of the Black Pearl, the whole start of the franchise. Dead Man's Chest could be considered a sequel, but At World's End is not, unless you consider them both two halves of one story, in which case they together are a sequel to The Curse of the Black Pearl. Because Dead Man's Chest and At World's End are a continuation from one to the other. If you watch Dead Man's Chest, it ends on a cliffhanger that leads into At World's End, which means that At World's End is not a sequel to Dead Man's Chest. It's a continuation or a conclusion of the existing story. Okay? It gets complicated. So let's talk about this. Sequels. Do you like sequels? I do, to an extent. I'm a big video game player, as you guys know, and so I'm a big fan of a good sequel. if it's done well, and if it's not just a continuation. I've been replaying the Dead Space trilogy because the new, modern, redone version of the first game, Dead Space, was just re-released, rebuilt from the ground up, and I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying it a lot. But let's look at the franchise. Dead Space 1 and 2 and 3. 2 and 3 are both sequels. Because while there's one overarching story across all of them, you could theoretically just jump into each one without playing the previous ones. You might be a little lost with the overall arcing story, but they're all their own self-contained stories. And Dead Space 2 is my favorite game of all time. And it being a sequel shows that sequels can be better than their original content. Then, of course, you have... Let's talk about Batman for a minute. If you're talking about the live-action Batman films, we're going to go to the 80s Tim Burton films. You've got Batman, the first one, of course, Michael Keaton, and Jack Nicholson. And then you have Batman Returns. Batman Returns was a sequel, but it was not as good as the first one. Okay, and you will sometimes have that. I know I'm going to get some people who disagree, who are going to be like, What? What? Are you serious? You can't be serious, sir. I am serious. And you can continue to call me sir if you like. But that's an example of, in my opinion, a sequel that failed, as opposed to Dead Space 2, which is a sequel that succeeded on every level. Right? And other times, too, there's sequels that are kind of iffy. Let's take a look at... I'm trying to think of a good one. You can do sequel series, too. Like, you've got... I'm a big Transformers fan, right? So you take a look at Transformers, the cartoons. You had the original Generation 1 cartoon. Then, as far as cartoons go, you had... If you don't consider the Japanese ones, if you just consider what we got here in the United States, you go from there to... I think straight into Beast Wars. And Beast Wars was like a sequel because it's supposed to take place in the same universe, right? So as a series. And then, of course, you have Beast Machines, which is a sequel to Beast Wars. Okay? And that makes sense because even though it's a continuation overall of the story, it's not... You don't have to watch the previous of any of those to get into them. Beast Machines kind of stretches it a little bit because if you didn't watch Beast Wars, you might be kind of like, But you could watch that whole series and not really worry too much about having seen Beast Wars if you kind of suspend your disbelief a little bit. So, sequels in general. I'm mostly a fan of sequels. I like continuing adventures, continuing stories of existing characters. Sometimes you get into stuff and sequels just aren't good. Like, there are some stories that once they're told, you can't see any more stories from a particular band of characters. Like, it just wouldn't make sense. I'm trying to think. There's some examples in recent memory of this where I was kind of like, it didn't really need a sequel. The characters really can't do much more than here. And now, of course, because I'm here on the spot trying to do this show, I'm drawing a blank. But, regardless, sometimes sequels are not good, and sometimes they are good. I like them in general. I like them. What do you folks think? If you want to leave a comment, this is going to go on YouTube. Right now, of course, the show is live as I'm saying this. But since I wasn't able to give anybody a heads up, then I was not able to really get anybody in the chat room to start with. So I don't have any chat. I don't have guests yet tonight. That will be coming as the show goes on, because I plan to do this every week without fail. Today is Wednesday. And I thought, well, I'm going to go back to Wednesdays because, just for old time's sake. But I'm going to change my mind, I think, because a lot of people have shows on Wednesdays. I know at least 2 other people one of whom I respect more than the other, that has a show on Wednesday. And I'm thinking of kind of breaking into an earlier in the week market, so maybe Mondays, because of course Tuesdays, I do something called Twitch Tuesday, which is where I stream games on Twitch, and I specifically, for Tuesdays, stream games that I have never played before. So it's always something new, a new experience. You guys can see me agonize over something that may not be my speed. While we're talking about all these different things that I do now, I do the Twitch Tuesdays. I do stream randomly throughout the week also, if you're into that. On YouTube, you can catch some of those streams, but you can also catch multiple episodes of the Uncanny Spirits Clubs. Uncanny Spirits Club, of course, is where I taste and sample different spirits and different alcohols for your enjoyment. And that has well over 50, 60 episodes. So, interesting stuff on there. I also have Robo Reviews, which I do reviews of my Transformer addiction of different things. I only have one up so far because it's been difficult actually to do the editing for those in a nice way. The one video I have up is okay, but it's not what I was hoping for. So yeah, there's going to be a lot of stuff up there. And on this show, I'm going to try to do interviews with all sorts of people. I'm going to try to get musicians on. I'm going to try to get cooks, chefs, at-home bakers, whatever. I'm going to try to get writers. I'm going to try to get game players. I'm trying to get weightlifters. I'm going to try to get inspirational speakers. Anybody and everybody who wants to be on the show, I am going to try to get. Except for a short list of people who are banned from speaking with me. Specifically, including people who stay affiliated with that first station that I was a part of, because anybody who sticks with that person are enabling her bad habits, because she's a terrible person. And I'm not saying that just to talk bad about somebody. I'm saying that because that is the truth. Okay? So, sequels. You see sequels in other things, too. You see sequels in, speaking of Uncanny Spirits, you do see sequels in drinks. There are plenty of times where a big company like, not so much somebody like Jack Daniels and Jim Beam and those kind of guys, but you see other companies. Let's take Bruichladdich, my favorite Scottish distillery. They make scotch, and they have a peated scotch. Peated meaning it's when it's smoked. The barrels are smoked in with peat from the peat bogs and stuff, and so it gives a very smoky, very swampy flavor in the final product, which I really enjoy. But they have a series of distillations called the Octomore, which are the most peated, the highest count of peated parts per million in whiskey in the world. And every year, every couple of years maybe, they come out with a slightly new distillation, which you could consider is a sequel, because it's all self-contained. It's a self-contained thing. You don't have to try the others, but if you want to, you can compare it. They tend to be pretty expensive, but still counts as a sequel, right? And I'm a big fan, as I said. Now, tonight's show, because it was mostly just for me to start introducing things and for me to be kind of like, yeah, let's see what's all this all about, then it's going to be short. I'm going to be done probably in another few minutes here. But I just wanted to get my foot in the door here and get things kind of firmly established. Future episodes will have a lot more of a variety of topics. I already know I'm going to do a talk about kids, specifically because as a parent, we all know the crazy things that our kids will just say sometimes, and man, my kid is a nut. So we're going to do a show about that, and share parenting stories. I'm going to do a show about movies in general. I'm going to do a show about music in general. I'm going to do a show about beer. I'm going to do a show about Pizza, maybe. I don't know. They're all going to be like one word thing. And I'm going to keep it simple and try to keep it entertaining and try to hold your attention a little bit, right? That's what I'm going to try to do. I'm going to try to hold your attention to some extent while I just babble on for nothing. Babylon. Maybe we'll talk about ancient Babylon. There you go. I'm sure everybody's like, oh boy, this show's boring already. So yeah, that's the plan. That is the plan. In the meantime, make sure you go to my YouTube channel, which is Spider Does Things at YouTube. And like, share, subscribe, all that kind of stuff. These episodes will go up there as well if you would rather listen to them there instead of going to some other podcast place. The one thing that you will notice is that I don't have my Patreon set up anymore. I don't know if there's really a demand for it anymore. There wasn't much before, so I doubt there's going to be a new one now. So I don't have that. I don't have a donation link or whatever, any of that kind of stuff. So if you are interested in supporting, you don't have to do anything but listen to the show, because the show will now be monetized with ad revenue from Spreaker. It's an idea that I've resisted for a long time because I hate advertisements. I hate them. But at the same time, I need to recoup some of the costs to keep everything running. I've got my fingers in so many different areas now that I'm just trying to recoup some of those costs for my time and energy. And this is the easiest way to do it without me trying to personally endorse things or to beg you guys to, can you please buy me a coffee with the buy me a coffee link? Here's my link to you to buy all my things. Money, 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 money. I don't want to bombard you with money things. I'm not going to start talking about, like, let's do a telethon and make some money, guys. No. So I will probably never address this point again, because I'm not interested, and I don't want you guys to tune in and just be like, oh, there he goes, he's talking about costs and money again, he must be asking for a buck or two. I'm not going to do that. So I've had to compromise with my punk rock sensibilities a little bit in order to get the ad monetization. It makes me a little uncomfortable, but I figure if I don't have to directly talk about the sponsorship stuff, I don't have to try to endorse anything, because I won't. I refuse to actually endorse anything. That's just something that's never going to happen with me. Then this is the best way for me to do it, to keep things running. Okay? Everybody on board? Everybody on board? Good. Cool. Alright, so I don't know what next week's topic is going to be. You'll find out when it gets here. I may try to choreograph this stuff in advance the longer things go on, so that I can get some semblance that I know what I'm doing, which is, you guys know me. I don't usually know what I'm doing. But that's the plan for the moment anyway. Okay? That's the plan. So, it's just about the 20-minute mark, and it's a bit short, but I think that's where I'm going to be done, around 20 minutes, because, again, this was really just an establishment pilot episode, so to speak, to get you interested, just to lure you in, just to get that lure around your neck there and pull you in, okay? So let's have a good night, okay? I will be back probably on Monday. I think I'm going to be doing Mondays instead of Wednesdays. So Monday will be Let's Talk About This, which is this show you're listening to right now. Tuesday is Twitch Tuesday on my Twitch channel, DMGRGN, and also to YouTube shortly thereafter. Wednesdays, who knows, just some random whatever. I might just do streaming, or I might do nothing. Thursdays are episodes of the Uncanny Spirits Club on YouTube. Spider Does Things. Look for the channel. Like, share, subscribe. And Fridays, of course, This Uncanny Earth on the This Uncanny Earth channel on YouTube. Okay? So that's my whole week. That's my whole week. It's packed in there. Packed in there. Don't make a joke. I don't want to have to add the explicit tag to this, so stop making jokes. Yeah, that's all I got. So enjoy some classic outro music, because that's what I had laying around. See ya.